I'm just a builder, entrepreneur, someone who loves working on hard problems. I've been given, a large set of tools to try and give impact to the world, and I'm just sort of on this mission to maximize my input to the organization of the world. I think, Neurosity really exists here to build and amplify that, neural activity that's going on inside your head, such that software applications and psychiatrists and the whole yourself even can understand what's going on and just make it very objective, not subjective. The puzzle pieces are there, we just need to put them together in a novel way, to deliver it so that my vision for a cohesive user experience is achieved.
If you're thinking of building a company or already run a company that is not registered, but you want to get registered, I've looked at a lot of solutions, and one of the best ones in the market right now is Doula. I reached out to Arjun, who is actually the founder of Doula.com. I asked him if he'd like to work together on the podcast. He was like, of course. Doula is sort of a platform that helps founders and businesses form and manage US companies, regardless of where they live. If someone is living in India, for example, and wants to start a company and get it registered in the US, he or she can do it by using Doula.com. Doula helps in forming the company. It can be an LLC, C Corp, or you name it. Doula offers a US address and a bank account to users, which can allow you to conduct business transactions that you can receive and send payments no matter where you live in the world from the United States. And other than that, they also provide tax consultation to the users, which is an incredible feature. And Doula simplifies the process of establishing and managing a US company, and especially for founders that are not in the US. And regardless of where they live, you can get your company registered with Doula.com. To check out Doula, go to doula.com/exerton. That is DOOLA.com/EXERTON.
How you?
Yeah. Before we get into the other stuff, which I'm so bummed about, I've been eyeing this in for a very long time. Before we get into that, just who is AJ? Who are you?
I'm just a builder, entrepreneur, someone who loves working on hard problems, approaching it from sort of this. I've been given, a large set of tools to try and give impact to the world, and I'm just sort of on this mission to see how I can maximize, my input to the organization of the world, and that's really what you see me on here. Is this midway through that journey, and here to just tell my story and keep it real.
Yep. I mean, you have a set of tools, and one of those, I don't know if I should call them tools or gifts or something, but you have ADHD. Uh,
Yeah.
is that a tool in your opinion, or what is it?
I like to think it's all like a carry-on bag. Like I'm walking around the world with, like, I think everyone has sort of a carry-on bag that they're dragging behind them, and we can ask what's in the bag, and I think it's not my identity. It just happens to be some luggage that I pull around, whether that's, my ADHD, depression, or general anxiety disorder. I think, just it's not my identity, but it is something that I bring in every room with me, and it's something that I carry and something that I'm happy to talk about.
Heard people talk about ADHD a lot, and it's a big problem. I mean, I know that much, but what is it like to have ADHD? I don't know if I have ADHD or not, but sometimes I feel like it. So if you tell me on that, then I'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think ADHD, along with many things in this world, is a spectrum, and there's sort of two different presentations of ADHD that people like to see. It's either like this hyperactivity, where you can think of like a young boy who's just constantly running around, can't sit still, can't even when they should be, they can't sit still. So that's like one easy presentation. And then there's another one where this is often presented in girls more, which is this inattentiveness, this almost like just zoning out, not hyperactive, but just zoning out and not being able to focus and just sort of daydreaming. But both of them, have to do with the same sort of mechanism that is like the inability to focus when the person wants to focus. So it's almost like a loss of control over executive functioning, of the person. So a lot of people will say like, I don't know if I have ADHD. And I think there's this interesting component where if you don't have the skills to take on a task, let's say you had to work as a barista at Starbucks, but you didn't know anything about it. It would be really hard for you to be performant, right? Because you don't know how to make drinks, right? And so it's going to be really hard for you to focus, regardless of if you have ADHD or not. But with the right skills, if someone can train you, all of a sudden now you can be performant when you want to be. But the difference in ADHD is really not being able to even engage with that training period. So you can't learn the training to become confident in the task without some sort of stimulant or urgency or something that really motivates the brain incredibly powerfully to drive that ability to focus. So I think a lot of the differences, when people think maybe I don't have ADHD, it's really like, well, take a step back and say like, have you been trained on how to do this? Are you being asked to manage a project when you've never managed a project before? Like, like, is there this overlap? Or, can you say to yourself, no, I do have the skills. I was trained as a programmer. I should be able to program when I want to program. I put the work in, and now all of a sudden I'm still not performant, even though I have the ability to be performant. That's really where I sort of draw the lines on ADHD.
Sometimes procrastination can take place of ADHD.
Yeah, so ADHD, I think a cool way to think about it is, another flag for that I look for now when people are telling me about their lived experiences is I always do my best work right before the deadline. Or I do my best work late at night. I think both of those have this really nice sort of long-term adaptation to the problems of that come with ADHD, where you're only able to focus when the task feels like incredibly urgent and it's due tomorrow and it's causing stress. That is enough like force to push the ADHD mind into a hyper focus state where they, are getting hours of work done in minutes. That often, and that's where people are like, oh, it's a superpower, but really it's like this very stressful mental state that pushes someone to be productive. So with ADHD, it's like interesting, creative, novel, or urgent are sort of these four driving factors that determine if someone with ADHD is going to be able to focus. And urgency is really one of the biggest drivers where, it's like this manufactured thing where, you're trying to get work done in the morning, but there's no urgency because it's due tomorrow. So, but then all of a sudden, 9 p.m. rolls around and it's like, oh my gosh, it's due tomorrow. I have to go to sleep by midnight. I have to get this done now. And all of a sudden now you can focus and get it done. So it sort of looks like that.
Can you just try to focus? I mean, I don't know how to put it, but even with ADHD, even with people who might have ADHD, might not have ADHD, but and focusing is a problem for them. Can't they? How can they just try to focus? I mean, just apart from the external factors that want you to focus. Sort of.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tricks you can do out there that can help you focus, but I think oftentimes someone with true ADHD will say, I know that those tricks exist, but they don't work for me. Like it's almost like someone with depression saying, hey, have you tried working out? Because, that really works for me to get my mind clear. When I'm feeling kind of down, I go work out and all of a sudden I feel better afterwards. And you tell someone with depression that, and they go like, they completely tune out because they're like, no, I mean, obviously working out, I know that, but I can't even will myself to get to work out. Like there's a bigger issue
Yeah.
here at play than what is actually, happening. And this exchange that we're having is almost an instantaneous representation of a bigger problem at play, which is that ADHD, which is that depression, or is that anxiety, something that is actually, uh, it's going from mental to turning into something that's physically restraining you from being able to execute. And I think that's really where I draw the line as well of neurodivergence versus neurotypical is, are you being held by something? It's a mental process turning into some physical limitation that is blocking you from being able to do the things to be performant when you want to be performant, whether that's going to sleep, if you're feeling incredibly anxious and you're like, I didn't get enough done today. And now you're all of a sudden you're having insomnia, whether that's being able to focus, but you're really looking at this, you know, mental turning into something that's physically limiting you to being able to be performant, going outside and walking your dog because you're very depressed and you just don't feel like there's a purpose, right? Like, and these things often, are what we need to have the conversation about, and less about what are the tactics, tell me what are the tactics that work for you, because maybe I'll go try them. It's like, nah, it's actually a waste of time because there's a bigger issue here at play, looking at treatment rather than, instantaneous tips and tricks.
That's a great point. I mean, I've never heard it before, but instantaneous tips done consistently, can't they match the level of things that long-term things can provide?
Not in someone who's currently going through it. I think someone who's currently going through it can't get that, is physically limited from being able to get that cadence of regularity that would have long-term benefit, right? It's like you're putting the cart before the horse, where they can't even get to the regularity because there's a bigger problem. A personal anecdote from my life, I was messing around with some of my anxiety medications, tried a medicine that's for antidepressant, and all of a sudden you can see, like, 2 weeks after starting that medication regimen, workouts started popping up on my calendar, one a week, two a week, and all of a sudden within 3 months of being on this, I'm working out 5 times a week, right? And I think if you look at the difference there, it's like all of a sudden working out did feel efficacious, where working out, I was able to go to the gym and it actually did feel good because I was treating the underlying problem of depression. And that all of a sudden allowed 3 months later for working out to feel good, but before going on those antidepressants, I didn't have a really, I had this big layer of apathy where I didn't feel the will to live. And it's like, why work out a body if I don't care if I'm here, right? Like, if anything, it's kind of like going against what I want to do because I don't want to be here, so I want to speed up my demise, right?
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's what I want to solve one day, but let's see if I get there. But before that, you're solving it. Neurosity. For that, how are you guys solving this major problem? And how does hardware actually solve this problem that inside your brain? I mean, we saw Neuralink the other day. It blew my mind too. But Neurosity and hardware, how does that solve this problem?
Mm, well, for one, I guess it's like there is a problem, right? So
Yep, of
there does
course.
there does seem to be an issue affecting like 1 billion people today, that have an unmet need. Um,
Yep.
whether it's not wanting to take pharmacological treatments, in India, you look at stigma, like stigmatism towards mental health, right?
Yep.
There's other ways to talk about it. I heard one company in India instead of calling it a therapist, called it like a shaman. And I think that all of a sudden they were providing like the same services that a psychiatrist would provide, but just rebranded it. And all of a sudden it was totally socially acceptable and was blowing up like wildfire. So it's like, okay, so half of this is just like wordsmithing and a boots on the ground, what uh, is the market, what is the market receptive to? And that's how you can help it. But I think that's sort of the software approach to the problem. And all of these are still accepting this concept that, we cannot understand what is going on inside another person's brain without extensive communication, extensive vulnerability, a similar language between people and, who are conversing, there is so much has to go right in order for someone to actually get mental health, just through talking to somebody, right? Like that person has to be able to compress it into words and then say it, and then that other person has to decompress it into meaning, and that often there's loss, so then you have to do it again and again, like you have to do it like 5 times, and then also it's like, oh, okay, I get how you feel, and they say it to the other person, they're like, that's not how I feel, but okay, whatever, so I think, like, holistically, if you were able to uh understand, what's going on inside someone's head, and create a window to that, all of a sudden the amount of struggle that a person has to go through in order to accurately, compress what's going on inside their head is reduced, right? So I think, like, fundamentally, if you take the first principles approach to this problem of there's a problem, what's the solution? It's really like, hey, let's eliminate the need for someone to have to compress their feelings into words and get other people to understand their meaning by, let's try to create a system that automatically learns, and can at any given moment talk about the instantaneous state of your mind, can talk about how it compares today versus other days. But really, building that. And that's why there's a need for hardware. So I think if you then push the future 100 years from now and say, why was this problem solved? Right. I think you can really thank hardware for that, right? Like, why is high blood pressure now manageable? Well, it's because we have the ability to manage, to get blood pressure readings, from anywhere because of hardware, right? And so you're able to see inside the person's body, and you're able to see that their heart is trying twice as hard as it should be, right? And give them a medication that regulates it, and now all of a sudden they're back to normal. So I think that's really what we need for the brain, is that ability to have a take-home hardware solution that gives you that insight, just like how a blood pressure monitoring, gives you the ability to see what's going on inside the brain. I think, Neurosity really exists here to build and amplify that, neural activity that's going on inside your head, such that software applications and psychiatrists and the whole, yourself even can understand what's going on, and just make it very objective, not subjective. I think making mental health objective is like the whole goal here, and I think that's what the promise of new hardware will enable, is remove that subjectivity that I don't think you really have ADHD. I think you really have, like, borderline personality disorder, like women are often misdiagnosed with ADHD, where it's either hormonal because of their menstrual cycle, and the doctor doesn't want to provide treatment for ADHD because they're not hyperactive like a boy. They're more suffering from the inattentiveness, or they are experiencing borderline personality disorder. And so they're getting totally misdiagnosed, and I think you look at the African American community in the United States, the Black community, they are often misdiagnosed by white doctors, and there's this, like, inability to converse and to get help, right? And I think adding in this objectivity is ultimately, this whole reframe of the entire mental health problem, and will be, the sort of like the wheels and the tracks and the train tracks that, you know, positive mental health for every person in this world could come from, is new hardware paradigms.
When you were solving, now you have a lot of clarity. You have been building this for almost like 2 years at this point. You have a lot of clarity on how why it exists and exactly the things you talked about right now. Uh, but why only hardware? I mean, isn't there anything else? Not a single thing else. You got like Neurosity. You have the crown, the Neuralink, the brain chip. Scary as it is, uh, but isn't there any other way to solve these things?
Well, I think there are a lot of amazing solutions out there right now that do exist, right? It's like BetterHelp is a online therapist you can talk to. There's a company called Achille Interactive that launched like a digital therapeutic for ADHD treatment, that is like a monthly subscription. So there is a number of things that are occurring, but I think fundamentally the biggest issue is that, when you're coming to validate these types of systems, let's say like you want to create some app that helps people feel relaxed when they're feeling anxious, right? Like you can use some limited hardware like the crown or something and generalize the solution to a population of people and sell it, but that's only going to work like 4 out of 5 days a week, where this solution isn't going to be useful every single day. And it turns out when you start having people using a product that isn't, that's only 80% reliable, when they need it, they're going to stop using it. Like imagine you had to commute to work and your car only turned on 4 days out of 5. First off, you're going to hate that car. You're going to want to get rid of that car, and you're going to do everything in your power to not lose your job on the random days your car decides to not work, right? It's a much harder life. And so you're ultimately looking for a better product constantly, right? And so I think like when we look at software only solutions, they often run up against this limitation of what's going on inside a person's mind today uh, may not be resolved by the solution that was generalized across a large population of people, like software was. Like you studied 100 people and we found out that, for most people, most of the time this worked. It's like a lot of most and most and most, but if we want to have this solution works every single time, as reliable as an airplane, then I think we need to have new hardware paradigms that are enabling that are exploiting the physics that is already occurring in the brain that we can tap into to let software be reactive and proactive, and essentially say, hey, your brain is operating like this today. Let's switch up what your music you're listening to, because it's ultimately not the music you normally listen to isn't going to work today, to make you feel good or something, right? So that ability to like quickly change the solution is really why we need new hardware, is that ability to be reactive, that ability to say, oh, it's not working, change it. And so that person gets that relief that they need in that moment.
Yep. I mean, we sure need new hardware, and hardware is fun. I've played around a little bit with hardware, and I think it's way more fun than software. Because you see things in real world. You have created something that you can hold. In software, you create a website. All right, it's on the web. Uh, but uh, I mean, we want new hardware. We have the crown. It looks amazing. But ho- I mean, how does how do get into hardware really? How to start building a hardware product? It's like there are so many ways, but how how should founders really get into building hardware if they want to?
Well, I think it always comes from like a frustration with the existing hardware. I think that's
Yeah.
often where uh
Other than
where
humane,
in yeah, I think that's often where people start, is they try the existing hardware and try to develop software for it. The existing hardware fails to deliver a cohesive user experience that's scalable, whether that's through price or literal efficacy of the hardware, whatever, comfort, looks, whatever, is your belief that's holding it back from mass adoption. And that's why you get started in hardware, is you are frustrated with the current, hardware. If uh, I like to say that, if I was born 30 years from now or something, I would probably just be working on software, because the hardware exists already. I wouldn't need to invent the hardware, but I just happen to live at a time where the hardware isn't invented yet, but it's physically possible to invent this hardware. It's just technologically needs to be uh, tuned and created and tested and iterated on. And I think when you have this understanding that like the puzzle pieces are there, we just need to put them together in a novel way, to deliver it so that my vision for a cohesive user experience is achieved. Then you need to build hardware, right? But like, let's say you were making an always on recording app, or let's say you wanted to make an app that I mean, I hear this all the time in SF that wanted to transcribe all of your conversations and give you feedback. Of course, that's possible from the iPhone, right? Where you have that type of stuff, but there's a frustration of the person who's making this always on recording app with the capabilities of the current iPhone for always on recording and things like that. So what do they have to do? They have to build new hardware in order to deliver a cohesive user experience that matches their vision and solves their frustration with the current hardware. So, I think that's often why hardware is made. It's born out of necessity and frustration. And I think that's where 3D printers came from. Was we have these $100,000 machines that can make very high resolution 3D prints, but I just want to be able to test my little idea. I don't need the resolution of a $100,000 machine. I could do this with a very low resolution, and maybe we can make this a desktop 3D printer that is, in all respects to a Fortune 100 company, absolutely trash and not of the quality they need to assess their prototypes. But for a builder or desktop maker or whatever, this is far exceeds what they need, because they're able to visualize their invention and iterate much faster. And I think it's just born out of that frustration that not every person had access to that $100,000 machine. And what if there was a $300 machine and someone built that vision, right? So it just comes from that like frustration. I think often is why software people venture into hardwares, because the software they want isn't possible with today's hardware. So you must invent new software or must invent new hardware. I think that's ultimately where new inventions come from, is that frustration, that misunderstanding of why was it done this way to begin with, when it can be done another way. And I think that's why you have different companies always being started and manifesting different products, and different brands and all these different aspects to it. I think especially building consumer, you learn that it's like a lot more branding than hardware. Like you can have better hardware but still lose because you don't have anyone buying it because you're not selling it correctly. If you do see another way to do it, do it. Don't wait for the right moment, but just start trying to do it. And I'm sure you'll understand at some point why it was done the way it was, but you may come across invention that happened 6 months ago that allows this new form factor to actually exist. Whereas when we designed the crown in 21, this hardware didn't exist. So we couldn't have built it with that, right? But now in 2024, there's this crazy new hardware that came out at the end of 23 that if you were redesigning it, may just work in the way you want. And I think that's like just an awesome driver of innovation when it comes to this whole hardware software debate. Is like, hey, if you see a better way to do it, because most likely the people, the way that you're replacing couldn't have done it the way you could do it today with the resources you have. So that's like gold right there. Anytime you see that, that's a potential company you can start.
You talked about designing the crown there. How should hardware founders really design their products? I mean, there are a lot of ways to do something, but how should what is how does designing a hardware product really look like? If you're building I'll just preface that if you're building a proper hardware product, I mean, if you're using Raspberry Pi to test your idea out, that's great. I mean, that's if you're hacking around, that's incredible. But designing proper hardware products.
Well, I think you have to make a couple decisions early on, and then just go for it. But I think some of those are like, are we trying to sell to consumers? Are we trying to sell to doctors? Are we trying to sell to enterprise? What if everything I decide comes true? Who am I going to get the most enjoyment from in serving? Is it an enterprise customer? Is it a doctor who now all of a sudden can finally help people in a way they've been dreaming of? Or is it that, consumers can change the way they live and, get great enjoyment from that? And I think if you're depending on, what your angle is, you could be trying to make a deep tech company that's working on making 3D printed rockets, and you never are going to try and sell a product to consumers, right? And that's a whole different style of innovation and what you have to prove to venture capitalists in order to get continued follow-on financing, that you're passing through technological milestones. You'll probably want to get grants from the army and the defense contractors and all of this type of stuff. Like, you're going to want to make partnerships with them. But if you're trying to go into a consumer hardware company, you're really looking at what is someone going to buy because they're buying into a lifestyle, and that's a whole different set of hardware that you're going to have to build because the costs are going to be different. But I think ultimately it's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay at the bleeding edge of science and technology? Then that's like a deep tech company, and you never need to worry about shipping a product because you need to worry about creating major technological innovation such that in 5 to 8 years you're being acquired by another company, more likely than not, and integrated into their R&D arm to then be integrated into their product down the line. If you're a consumer company, it's like, don't even worry about the hardware product until you have 1 million people begging you for the hardware, or following your brand. Like, as I work on a new brand for getting like the next device out, I'm really starting with like just from branding perspective, what is something that I can put out there that has distribution, so that when I have a message that I want to get out, aka, hey, I have a new hardware product you can buy for $200, that distribution system is already in place, right? Where, I already have reached through the brand to millions of people who will then purchase it. Because if you're designing a product that's in the thousands versus the hundreds of thousands versus the millions, that changes the fundamental components of the actual product itself. It changes, are you using plastic or are you using metal? Are you creating your own, wireless Bluetooth module, or are you buying an off-the-shelf wireless Bluetooth module? Or all of these different questions sort of come back from like, what's the demand of the product? And you don't even know the demand of the product until you have, some evidence of mass distribution of what you're trying to sell. So I think when I started Neurosity, it was really around this idea that like the world is going to be using computers that are running on our heads, whose main activity or whose main input is brain activity. And they're going to be running multiple applications in parallel. And each of the applications that a user is picking are unique to the user, and, all of this stuff. But like, no one was actually trying to buy brain computers to begin with, right? Like, no one is searching like top 10 brain computers, right? Like, no one is, or like, which brain computer should I get my spouse for Christmas, right? Like, no one's doing that. So I think like making a hardware for that is super limited. And I think if we reframe it and say like, hey, we're going to make a replacement for ADHD medication, here's how many people are searching for ADHD medications. Here's advertising that they resonate with. Like, I can say, hey, have you ever had to stop taking ADHD medication because of a pregnancy? Like, and every person who's had to do that immediately is like, yeah, that's me. Like, oh my God, that's me, right? Like, that's me. Like, is this product made for me, and get excited about it. And I think like that is actually so important for making a hardware product, because then that shows demand, that allows you so much more power, because distribution is everything when it comes to selling a product. It's like, how many people can you get to buy it? How much effort do you have to put in to get people to buy it? Building a hardware product without proven demand, I think, is a terrible idea. And the best part is that you don't need any hardware to prove demand. You can do that all like a software company. You can do all testing, running ads for $20, and see which one responds the best, right? And verify that you are getting engagement from the target market that you're going after before you ever try to sell them a product, and having them buy into the brand before they try to actually buy the product, you know, and that when this product comes out, they're like, oh my God, finally I get to get more involved with this brand, you know, and I think that's really the most important part for building a hardware company.
How do you nail user comprehension? I mean, how do you create something that's so innovative, so new that it changes the world, but something that's so simple that the user can understand it by just taking a look at?
My best understanding is, uh, you know, these successful consumer hardware companies are incredibly rare when they come from a startup. You know, a lot of the products that we own come from very large companies, whether that's like your iPhone or, you know, this thing's coming from Logitech or, you know, there's just like a couple few large companies that are producing this, whereas like the number of software, you know, hardware companies is the new hardware companies is very small. So, you know, but I think like this microphone Blue, you know, that was like a company that came out of nowhere and created this product that people really wanted, that was this affordable mic, right? And this ability to be a podcaster, you know, even though you're just someone in a room at home, right? And all of a sudden now you can be just like the people you heard on the radio, right? And buying into that lifestyle, and you have, you know, this whole new momentum behind it. It's like they cracked distribution of an idea that people resonated with, right? And then they were able to scale. But you know, how many microphone companies have come before them, right? Like, you know, so many, but like, who's cracking that? Who's frustrated that, you know, why do I sound terrible when I am recording at home? You know, and what is the solution there? It's new hardware, right? And it's that gets that user experience and really like wraps it all together, you know. So I think to me it's all about that frustration, you know, that messaging that resonates with people that instantly get it. To me it seems like that's the secret that I'm trying to crack now, before I make the hardware product. Like, that's not to say don't innovate in hardware. Like, I've been working really hard to create a pocket-sized EEG system, but I don't want to try and decide what it looks like. I don't want to decide, you know, anything about it really until, uh, you know, I have a huge demand from this brand, you know, and these customers, before I ever try and sell them it, because that's, I think, more important than anything, is proving that, you know, there are people who will buy this product at its price point, and that, you know, you have the ability to reach millions of them.
So, do the large hardware companies control the design narrative?
The large hardware companies, I think, control the lifestyle narrative. Apple, you know, and the
Yeah.
smartwatch, right? Apple uh, does an amazing job at pushing the lifestyle of someone who has Apple products versus
Yeah.
the technology, right? So I think, like, you know, there have been tons of smartwatch startups that have come and failed or been acquired, which is a great success in today's world. You know, I think, but what they all ran short up against was the ability to sell that lifestyle and to get that product that meets that lifestyle of that general consumer in front of people, right? They weren't able to get their Apple Watch competitor in front of as many people as Apple was able to get it in front of. And Apple was able to get it in, you know, and even if they were successful getting it in front of people, they don't have the buy-in of the lifestyle of that
Yeah.
brand. So even if people are aware of it and they see the Apple Watch at the same time, they're going to want to enter the lifestyle, buy things that, you know, reaffirm the lifestyle that Apple is controlling versus this new company that's rebelling or something like that, right? Like, maybe they want to conform, right? Like, most people want to conform in society, not rebel. So, you know, I think that's what I talk about. Like, large companies hold the lifestyle, like Dell, IBM, like they control the lifestyle of a corporate, you know, entity that's purchasing, you know, secure computers. And you know, you would want to use that, you know, if you were purchasing, rather than some obscure company that says they're 10 times more secure than a Dell, right? It's like, yeah, but I don't know what you're trying to sell, but Dell owns that lifestyle space in someone's head when they say, I want to get a secure workstation for my workforce. Okay, like you need to go buy some Dells, right? Like, so I think that's what big brands are really good at. And that is actually way more important than the technology that they put out. I mean, it's important, but to own that lifestyle concept in someone's mind, you know, I think is really important. So I think like you look at like Uber still has this lifestyle of being able to hail a car,
Yeah.
and they can use that for when they change to autonomous driving. You know, they could partner with someone there, or they, you know, but it's going to take a long time for an autonomous car to gain the same lifestyle control that Uber has in people's minds, right? So like that's why the
Yeah.
incumbent is still hard to offset, is because they have such tight control over the lifestyle that consumers are buying into and conforming with.
Do you think if taking a step back from Uber to IBM and Dell and Apple and all these companies, they have a apart from the lifestyle mode, do they have a manufacturing mode too?
Probably, but you know, I think maybe supply chain, but I have to say, like, the thing that gets you acquired is distribution, not, I think, like, often not technology in consumer world. So, you know, I think maybe supply chain, but like the difference uh, is that when they go to a manufacturer and say, "Hey, we want to start a new project with you," that manufacturer knows it's going to be in the millions. And so if another company comes and asks to start the same project, they don't know if it's going to be in the hundreds or tens of thousands. And if they're saying millions, they don't know if they're going to be true. So it's going to be a much more risky investment. So I think like when you look at uh, manufacturing, most manufacturing is done through contract manufacturers of consumer electronics. So, you know, I think you're really competing against, you know, other companies trying to make chips. Like Nvidia, you know, is buying, you know, time to make their GPUs from a contract manufacturer in Taiwan called TSMC. If there was another company that went there and said that they were going to have as much demand as Nvidia, you know, if not more, that company is going to be like, I don't know, I don't trust you. I'm going to sell Q4 of 2025 to Nvidia and not to you, because Nvidia is going to be here and they have proven demand and distribution and all that stuff. But I want to believe you. Like I want, you know, I want to work with you, startup, like, because that's just means more sales for me, right? Like, so it's actually more still on that like proven demand still trumps you know, and I think that's why, you know, new companies can displace an existing company, because supply chain is not the moat. It's actually that lifestyle that is the moat that it always comes back to, and that distribution of demand and that guarantee of sales, because they have such a large community that wants to buy into that.
Should companies really outsource their manufacturing if you want control over the supply chain? I mean,
I would say once again, it comes back to anticipated demand, and like the complexity of the product that you're building. You know, to get a workforce trained to be able to make something like an iPhone or the Vision Pro is super hard. I mean, that is not someone, you know, if you wanted to start a factory of and hire people from around the Bay Area to come work at a factory that's capable of producing iPhones, that's going to take you like a decade to get there. And you could go to a factory now that built last year's iPhone and has an incredibly technologically advanced workforce, right? That you can leverage. I think that's a great reason to go contract manufacturer. But if you're building boats here or something, and you're building an electric boat, and you know you're still designing it and things like that, then yeah, I guess you don't have to have, you know, the technological capabilities are that are required to produce it are less, because this is using stuff that was available in the 90s, right? You know, plastic surrounding electronics has been done for years, right? But titanium metal and all that type of stuff with, touch, like all that advanced stuff, it's just super hard to train and retain a workforce that's capable of doing that. So I think, going from that 0 to 1, where you're like, I need just somebody to help me make this, and you don't have to hire all the HR, you don't have to deal with all of that. You don't have to have always on demand, because when you're producing your own, you're essentially, you can't have any downtime, or else you're wasting money. If you say, hey, we made all the products we need for this year and it took us a month, then you're like, well, what are you doing the rest of the 12 months with that space, people? Now, when you try
Right.
to ramp back up, they've all gotten different jobs. But if you work with a contract manufacturer, they just move them over to another part of the factory. And when you put another order in, they move them back. And so now you already have people who are trained, and, you don't have to deal with that. So, I think it's really, once again, just goes back to that, like, it is a bit more of a complicated equation of like, what's the technological complexity of this? How many, people are required to build this? Is it an assembly line of 10? Is it an assembly line of 1,000? How big is it? Is it the size of a car and you don't want to have to pay to ship that across the ocean? Or is it the size of a square reader and you can put 1,000 of those inside a container and ship it? And it's okay if that's not opened for 6 months, because 6 months ago you shipped the same container to meet demand, and you have a container going every single month, right? And it's okay if it takes 6 months from shipping to arriving, because you've already been pushing that demand out. So I think, like, but you wouldn't want to do that with a car, that you need to get money
Yeah,
back on
definitely.
immediately. Like, then you're, if your car takes 6 months to ship, you're in big trouble, because you're not going to be able to get money back from that for a long time. So that means you need to have your manufacturing physically close to your sales centers, right? And then you need to be able to deliver quickly, right? So Tesla, like, what's the time from a car rolling off to the time they're getting paid for that? You want to shrink that as fast as possible for the larger an asset. So, and sometimes even, like, if once an asset reaches a certain point, you have to make prepayments to the manufacturer before they even make it. So you have to, like, put money down. And so, but there's this sweet spot of, it does seem to be like a lot of different variables that go into deciding, should you do contract manufacturing or should you not? It's definitely one of the more complex questions. Yeah, and I think automation as well has like a whole aspect to it. Are you using robots to make it, or are you using people to make it? There's just
Yeah.
a lot of different questions that come around along with it that make it hard to give a finite answer to.
I think this has been incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time out for this. And I know you have a lot of on your plate, but this was incredibly fun for me too. And one last question that I'd like to end with. I've
Sure.
been like into startups, VCs, and all these things since I was like 11. What do you think is one fact that will blow 11-year-old me mind?
Mm, well, I think, like, one of my favorite facts that I've learned is that uh, the brain is not like this sort of system that can move into any mental state, where at any given time you can shift into a focus state or an relaxed state, or anything like that, where you can go from 1 to 1 with ease. But in fact, the brain is more of like this finite state machine that you can move between states, but you can't always get from one state directly to another. And one thing we learned, when we were working with focus and helping people feel focused, is that if they were feeling anxious, more anxious than they normally do above their baseline, they cannot move from this, like, they're not in their baseline state, they're actually in an anxious state. So you have to move them into their baseline and then into a focus state. So we found that, helping people with mindfulness exercises, where we're actually putting them into a mindful state through, this whole software brain entrainment solution we created, we can actually move someone who's feeling anxious into a flow state by moving them into a mindful state first and then into a flow state. And there's just so many little intricacies of the brain that, are yet to be discovered. But I think that's the type of stuff that makes me realize that, hardware is going to be incredibly powerful, because you can see the current state of that person and say, oh, don't try to boost them into flow yet. Like, first they need to go into mindful, then we can boost them into flow, but that was like the coolest fact that I think I've discovered so far.
Yeah, and that blew 15-year-old me mind.
Cool. Yeah, remember that,
But
like, the next time you're trying to focus and you're just like feeling really anxious, don't beat yourself up and be like, why can't I focus? Go to mindful, then go to focus.
the transition, dude, that's incredible. I mean, I wish someone told me this before. But
Same.
but yeah, I think this was incredibly fun, and the whole episode sort of blew my mind. But I think that's it from my side. Anything you'd like to say?
No, I really appreciate you reaching out and wanting to put this together. I mean, I think half of what I'm working on here is talking about it, and if you have an idea that you want to spread, you have to teach people about it. So I think that's really like my purpose of coming here. Of course, if people want to learn more about myself, my name is on Twitter and LinkedIn and all that stuff is Andrew J. Keller, Jay Keller, and Neurosity is Neurosity, and you can find us at neurosity.co or on Twitter at Neurosity, and see the conversation that's sort of building around what we're working on. And yeah, I think the big goal that I've always had is really like create a very trusted and loved, company, and follow along for as we really build this brand around giving people the ability to be performant when they want to be, and I think it's just a new era of, companies that are starting, and I'm just grateful to be able to be a part of it.